Hi, this is Lora Cecere, and today I'm interviewing the technologists coming to the supply chain. Hi, this is Lora Cecere, and today I'm interviewing the technologists coming to the Supply Chain Insights Global Summit for our digital showcase. The digital showcase is a digital forum for the technologists to share what they're doing, any insights to help people when they come to the summit to have better conversations. I am interviewing Ron Ezek, and he is with Orchestr8. Ron, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Laura. Happy to be with you.
Tell the group a little bit about you and a little bit about Orchestr8.
Well, I was actually born into a manufacturing family. The companies manufactured, designed, manufactured, imported, serviced production equipment for large-scale graphic arts industry. So all the big machines, that's the business we were in. And my first job began with a broom and some sweeping compound. By the time I got out of college, I had developed some very rudimentary but productive time and attendance technology for job costing. And next thing you know, I got involved in the industry. My first company was purchased by Cecere, and 3 decades later, here I am. With respect to Orchestr8, we're not so much technologists as we are pragmatists. And I say that because we actually began as consultants, driving the same kind of results we currently do. But we realized that the amalgam of ERP and BI and all the other kind of technology scattered about wasn't really sufficient to drive the kinds of transformation and results that companies so desperately aspired to achieve. So it was after some iterations of driving these kinds of results that we decided to become more reliable and predictable so that the companies could continue. After our engagement concluded, we developed the platform, which is Orchestr8. And 20 years later, we may be the best kept secret in inventory planning and supply chain.
Well, I know a lot of people do not know you. You're better at building software, I think, than marketing. But why don't you show the group a little bit about what you do, maybe a couple of slides or a
Sure.
case study?
How about a little mix of both? So
sounds good. So yeah.
Okay. So essentially, the concept is the methodology that came about some 50 plus years ago, generated by MRP and then MRP2, CRP, DRP, ultimately becoming ERP, is really designed to make things. So the end result is struggle to match demand with what you have, with your supply. And that creates challenges associated with fill rates and service levels. And of course, forecast inaccuracy is a compounding factor. And that essentially is the current state. That's ERP. So what Orchestr8 does and has done for 20 years is we've reversed that. We've made the priority aligning supply with demand, as opposed to adjusting demand to meet supply. And as simple as it may sound conceptually, it requires modification in some methodology, but it's transformational. And I'll make the distinction. The current conversation about demand-driven or DDMRP, I very much liken to the distinction between MRP1 and MRP2. So MRP1 was very useful in its relationship with time phase material requirements planning. But the introduction of MRP2, which incorporated capacity planning and consumption of forecast, et cetera, and things like this, it became far more useful, far more powerful. And because Orchestr8 employs a variety of planning methods, not just buffers and what is currently the kind of definition of the methodology. We are more like the evolution of DD than what a lot of people are talking about. So let me, let's do this. Let's turn it into slideshow. There we go. So, it should be obvious, right? If we're struggling to get supply to match demand, then maybe what we should do is we should have demand drive supply. So let's look at results. This isn't supposed to be a commercial, but in company after company, and these are all OA implementations, we reduce on-hand inventory, we generate unburdened capital, which essentially turns into free cash flow. I have problems with some of our results because the implementation team comes back and says service levels and fill rates are above 99%. And I ask, is that 100%? They say, no, it's like 99.7%. Okay. So, but time and time, it's the same, right? So that was 3M. This is Allergan. Across a variety of industries, across different manufacturing and distribution models, whether it's rate-based, whether it's MTO, it's ETO, high volume, low volume. We improve service levels and fill rates. At the same time, we reduce inventory. So here the gold is the after, and the blue is the before. So here, Boots, Boots Walgreens Alliance, this organization manufactures all their own branded cosmetics and the other beauty and other personal care items. It's a substantial operation and the largest in Europe. From a case study perspective, let's look at Bar, who's a UK-based soft drinks company. These were their priorities. They're very clearly set. And when they asked us to come in and see if we could assist them, one of the inherent capabilities in our system is that we can simulate. So we'll take historical data, which is actual, and run it through our platform. And we could show you what the delta is in terms of what you could have achieved using a different approach. And the results? Well, we exceeded everything in 4 months. And that's one of the things about us. We're not so much a software vendor that comes in with a promise, and if you can get it right, you'll get the results. We know how to do this because we're really about engaging in a change management process. And the typical situation these days is that companies have an aspiration, and then they look for technology, and the technology defines the method, the process is an output of the workflow, and some things are often achieved, often temporary, as Nick Lynch had recently characterized in your discussion with him. He said they're incremental and generally temporary, and that's true because the fundamentals aren't being addressed. And to master anything, to achieve anything advanced, you really have to address the fundamentals first. The highest performing supply chains and the highest performing companies, for that matter, from an operational perspective, they haven't defined aspiration. They then define or identify the appropriate methodology. They then define a process to support that. And then they introduce the technology to support the process, to enable it, to make it more efficient, and then to measure it. So a lot of organizations who seek technology first, it's the siren song, so to speak, but it doesn't resolve the problem. Those who follow Supply Chain Insights probably are familiar with Brian Dooley, who a couple of years ago did a great presentation about the transformation at BT. And while BT is primarily known as being a telecom service provider, they have a large manufacturing and even larger distribution operation. A lot of complexity, different constituents, internal, external, all their own infrastructure, as well as all the consumer products. And of course, what BT accomplished, that's Orchestr8. We did that. Time and time again, these are the results that are achieved. Our results are typical. In fact, it's so typical that those that choose to engage us, and we go through a simulation process, we'll guarantee the ROI. We'll guarantee the results. You don't pay for the software. Those who also follow your content are familiar with Nick. What may not be known, as Nick describes his journey and the transformation at Shell Lubricants, that also is 08. That is us. And by many measures, it's the largest demand-driven supply chain transformation on the planet. So, that's the quick tour. There's so many other companies listed here and many more that aren't, where the results are typical.
Well, when people see you at the Global Summit, what's top of mind? What would you like for the engagement to look like? Imagine somebody walked in a booth at a trade show. What would you like to talk about?
Well, the interesting thing is that, and I really appreciate the change in the format that you've employed this time. In so many of these conferences, it's technology, 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 and people walk around and they say, "What do you do?" I was recently at the supply chain conference in Barcelona in June, and I say, we reduce inventory, we improve service levels and fill rates, and release capital, because that's what we do. But they've been, the marketplace buys the way the vendors train them to buy. So what they really want to hear is, how does popcorn pop? They want to talk about technology because they think it's about technology when it's really about their operations. And I'd like to have a conversation about ops taking back their part of the business and getting IT and the others who aren't usually being asked what they need to release the hostage. The simple fact is that with the millions and millions of dollars or euros invested in technology implementations, the years of dysfunction, disruption spent, planners are still using spreadsheets. And, one thing that you learn when you're exposed to as many industries as we are, in the auto industry, when they look at cost per VIN service, particularly in warranty, they understand that there's an important distinction between what is failed and what is causal. But it seems the marketplace is chasing symptomatic relief. They're looking at what is failing, but not what's causing the failure. And it's our contention, and I think demonstrated by the rather extraordinary results that we achieve every single time, that it's not about faster fire engines or longer ladders. It's not how quickly you can get to the problem. It's about abating the problem. And, supply is inventory, whether it's coming in or going out or being produced. And if you can get that right, it's at the center of everything. It's hiding in plain sight. If you can get your inventory planning aligned with what it is you want to achieve in the market, then that's the conversation. It's interesting. We've kind of lost sight of what the fundamental is. And the reality of it is that companies take cash, which is a limited resource. They turn it into something that's not cash. They bust their bottom trying to turn it back into cash. And when you choose to allocate those funds, you should allocate them efficiently. I have a conversation so frequently where companies say, well, if I improve my forecast or I extend my network or I create visibility. And I say, all those things are interesting. And with no doubt that there's utility in that. But the problem with the forecast is that it's always inaccurate. Now, yeah, sure, your fast-moving items may not have a big problem with your forecast. But generally speaking, where else in the business could a 30 or 40 or 50% inaccuracy on a regular basis be accepted? It's nowhere else. Yet it's common practice. In fact, sometimes when I said where can 30% be accepted, they laugh. People laugh. 30%? Are you kidding? So it seems to be so fundamental. So the conversation is, we're struggling with this. How do I modify my operation, my model, my method, to take this stone out of my shoe and the 500 others that we see on a regular basis? The thing about supply chain is that we confront new challenges every day from the same old problem. So why don't we go back to the expertise, improve that, elevate our ability to perform, and then align the technology and the capability and everything else to support that. And that's the conversation I'd like to have.
Well, Ron, we look forward to seeing you in Chicago. I don't think you have a lot to travel. I think it's in your neighborhood. But safe journey, and see you there next Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And if the weather's nice, I could walk there. That's right.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Until then, bye now.